chat. I'll give Maureen a couple of seconds to chime in, and then we'll get started. Not sure if Maureen has audio or not. I guess, oh, so what you want to check, Maureen, is that your speakers are functioning. Are you able to hear audio from another website? You are going to want to go to a computer that has audio, because otherwise it will, the workshop won't work as well if you're not able to hear my voice. Would you like to try from a different computer? Okay, good. Good. I'm glad. Eric, how is this? Is this a little better? Okay, I'll try to talk as loudly as I can. Hopefully that will work well for everybody. Just turn the volume on my sister machine. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone can hear me fine. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the workshop. Normally when we do online workshops, we keep them to half an hour because it's actually really hard to pay attention to a disembodied voice for more than a half an hour. But access is one of those topics that takes a while just to figure out what people know and what people don't know. So I went ahead and I scheduled an hour for the workshop. I'm not sure if it will take us the full hour. We might end up early, but in either case, we should have a lot of time for Q&A. And since it's just a small group of us, there's just 6 of us in the room, please don't hesitate to type questions into chat. If you would like to have the microphone, if you raise your hand, I can give you voice rights, and then we'll just need to make sure if you don't have headphones, you won't be able to participate via voice because it creates feedback for everybody else on the call, and that really doesn't work well. So if you don't have headphones, then go ahead and use your chat to be in touch with me. If you have headphones and would like to talk, just let me know in the chat window and I'll give you microphone privileges to the room. Okay, good. Sounds great. So welcome again to Microsoft Access Guided Tour. So I have a couple of goals for our workshop today, and all of the information I'm going to be presenting is on our online tutorial. So what I'm going to do is put that tutorial in the web links pod, and it should open up for all of you on your computers. So I'm putting the link in now. Just going to copy and paste that in. And all of you now should be able to see a web page on your screen that says Microsoft Access Basics. That is our online tutorial. The handout that I'm using in Adobe Connect is listed there, and so are 2 of the files we're going to be using. So would you mind just raising your hand to let me know that you were able to access the web page? What we're going to do next is I'm going to take a couple of polls, and then I will go ahead and start using some of the sample files that are on the online tutorial. Great, so Nancy, Larissa are able to get to the web page. Erin, Maureen, how about you? Are you able to see the web page? And welcome, Sepui. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. Good. Erin, what you might want to do is hit Alt-Tab. Sometimes what happens is it opens up in another tab on your browser or in another window. So what you'll want to do is have the tutorial open in one window and have my voice in the Adobe Connect open in another window. So I think, is everyone good? Roseanne, were you able to get to the tutorial? Okay, if you're not able to, why don't I put the address in the chat window, and then you can just put it directly, open it on your end by clicking on the link. So if you click on this link in the chat window, that should take you to the online tutorial. I'm going to go ahead now and go to my second slide, and I'm going to start a couple of polls. So the first poll I'm going to ask is, how long have you used Microsoft Access? And the reason I'm asking you this is because Access has changed quite a lot from version to version. And if I get a sense of how long you've been using it, that tells me the kinds of translation I may have to do across versions. So I'm going to go ahead and open this poll. The poll is, how long have you been using Microsoft Access? I'm going to go ahead and vote. I'm going to ask all of you to go ahead and vote on the options are basically just started, 1 or 2 years, more than 2 years. So we have 5 people. We have a couple more people. Good. Everybody's voted. And it looks like for many of you, you've just started. So in a way, that actually is an advantage because the new version of Access does things in a much more simple way than some of the older versions did. So we'll keep that in mind. For those of you that have been using it for a while, you may find that it looks different from version to version. So please don't hesitate to put questions in the chat or take the microphone and ask questions that way. Go ahead and let's go ahead, and the second poll I'm going to ask is, what brought you to this workshop? As you might know, there are many parts to Access, and I'm curious which part of Access is the most important for you to learn about. I'm going to go ahead and open the poll. In my case, what I use the most is queries. What do you find is the most important for you to learn about today? Roseanne has been using it for 10 years ago. So she's saying just started because I didn't give that as an option. That's true. Go ahead and vote. Let me know which part of Access you are the most interested in. Larissa, your hand is still up. I just wanted to check if you had a question for me. Oh, perfect. Great. How's everybody doing? Looks like many people want to learn about queries. Couple of people on forms and reports, and 1 person on tables and relationships. Beautiful. Now, prior to the workshop, I received an email from Roseanne, and she made a request that I should cover importing information from Excel and also looking for duplicate records in queries. So I've put that into the plan for today. But where I'm going to start is in kind of a show and tell with the template. So let me close this poll and go to my next slide. So the online tutorial has 2 files linked from it. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and open them both up. We're going to start with the student template database. So the Access version that I'm using is Access 2007. And I think the student template database is customized for that version. If you have a different version of Access, I'm not sure if you'll be able to open the student database on your computer, but you will be able to see it when I share my screen with you. So if you want to go back to the tutorial page and click on the link, it's the first link under Web Resources. And you can, let me that in back. You can click and open the student template database in Access, and then I will share my screen and we'll just spend a few minutes doing a quick tour of the student template database. So again, what I'm asking you to do is click on the student template database in the online tutorial. That will download it to your computer, and then open up Access, and you should be able to open up the tutorial. What I'm going to do now in Adobe Connect is I'm going to share my screen with you, and you will be able to see what I am doing with the student template database. Okay, let's share my computer screen. I would like to share my Access window with you. What you should see now on your screen, let me put that as full screen so that more thing so that all of you can see it. Give me 1 second. Perfect. So what you should see on your screen right now is my computer screen with the student database open. I'm going to talk for about 2 minutes, and then I'm going to hand over control back to you and give you a few minutes to play with this template. The reason Microsoft creates these templates is it's actually hard to see what Access can do when you're just getting started with it. It's almost like starting with a blank page and trying to imagine what a huge novel might look like. It's sometimes an easier way to start with one of their templates and get a sense of how you could create a database that does pretty amazing things. So this is a blank database for students and guardians. It's kind of designed for a school context. If I click on New Student, it lets me create a student. I'm going to create a student, and I'm going to let each of you do this in a few seconds. Here's John Smith, and here's his email address. You can also include images in an Access database. So if I click on Attachments, I can find any picture that's on my computer. Here's one of me. And that will put that picture in the database. So this is how you would bring in photographs to go with a student. Over here under Level, you can see that there's a drop-down menu. So here I am. I'm going to be a freshman today. And that, let me save that. And I've just made a single person. I'm going to close this form and now give myself a guardian. So here's the guardian list. Here's a new guardian. And this would be John Smith's mother, Mary Smith. I can put a picture in for Mary the same way that I did for John. Let me see if I have any other pictures here. This is going to be a different picture, but it will serve its purpose. And if I hit save, what I've done is I've created one student and one guardian. And if I go to the student list, I can assign John Smith to this particular guardian. So if I go and open John Smith's record, under guardian information, I can assign the guardian. Let's see, general, close, and under guardian list, I can connect the guardians to the students. So the two parts of this database can be connected to each other using the drop-down menus that are built in to the forms. The same way this database functions, it has different parts that will be used from different parts on your computer. So it connects to Outlook, it connects to email, and under the student list, I can now connect with the student ID number and so on. On the left side, what you will see is a lot of pre-made information. So if I double click on students, it shows me the student table. Let me use Windows. Under forms, I can get the details. So here's the guardian list form. Here's the student list form. And if I want to, I think if I close the windows and then go into reports, the reports show you how you can print things out, such as a list of all your students, your emergency contact information, and so on. The reason I'm walking you through this is so that you get a sense of what happens when you have a database that has many complicated pieces to it and they're connected together. Not to say that this is the kind of database that will be appropriate for your situation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to take the full screen off. Okay. And I'm going to hand it over to you to try this on your end. Let me put my PowerPoint back up. And what I would like to ask each of you to do now is to open the student database on your computers and try it out. And I'm going to give you maybe 5 minutes to explore the database. If you have difficulties getting to it, let me know. I'm going to put the direct link in the chat window. So if you're not able to get to it from the tutorial, you'll be able to download it from here. It's a student template database, and this is the link to it. Okay, so if you click on that link, that should download the database for you. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to try it out, and just let me know if you have questions for this part of it. I hope everyone is doing okay out there. I also want to ask if any of you would like to use the microphone to get in touch with me. I'll go ahead and turn the microphones on, and that way if you have a headset, I think Maureen was the person who did not have a headset. If you'd like to talk, there's a talk button on the bottom left of your screen that you can use to talk with me. Oh, Roseanne, do you have an older version of Access? Is that why you're not able to open the student template? If you hit the File button on your version of Access and go to Templates, you should have an older version of the student template that you can use. The student template has been in Access for several years now. They just have recently upgraded it. Okay, Larissa, I'm glad things are going well so far. Okay, I hope everyone is able to poke around the student database. The idea behind this is just to get a sense of what a database might look like once you have one in a good place. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give you another 3 minutes to play with the database, and then I'll take questions about the template, and then we'll go on to talk about user versus designer issues. So I'm going to give everyone about another minute to play with it. Roseanne, did you try clicking on the link in the chat window? And then you should see download. If you have Access 2007, you should be able to download it from the link that's in the chat window. Let me put the link in one more time, and let's try that before. Oh, good, perfect. So once you open that up, you actually have these, and what happens when you hit download on the link? It should save the database to your downloads folder, and then you should be able to open it in Access. There should be a button that says download on the top right when you get to the page that I've put into the chat window. I guess what I'll do, it's 12:20 now. What I can do is go ahead and share my screen again and show you a little bit about the template database and how it's put together. And my contact information is on the online tutorial page. So if you would like to play with the student template database at a later time, you can get in touch with me. I can also probably email you the database file in case you're not able to get it from the online location. So if everyone is okay with that, then what I will do is go back to screen sharing and show you a little bit how the template database is put together. So let me just ask that. Is everyone okay? Okay, so, oh, perfect. Thank you. It's a little hard to teach online because there's this great silence around me. I think I much prefer teaching in a in-person situation. So what I'm going to do next is talk a little bit about the differences in looking at a database as a user versus looking at a database as a designer. So the student template database, Microsoft has made it, and they've made it in a way that they feel is ideal. All the parts connect to each other. Um, so when you use the student template database, you're mostly looking at it as a user. Somebody else has made this kind of work of art that already is connected. Um, what we'll do a little bit later in the workshop is we'll start with the blank database and put some of the pieces together ourselves. What you'll find is being the designer of the database is much, much harder than being the user of the database. If you want to share a database across an office, which is what we do here at the Weigel Information Commons, we have a shared drive, and that's where our database sits, and all of us can access it from our computers. But typically, there's only one person, maybe two people, who are regularly going in and doing the design of the database, and a much larger number that uses them. And part of what makes a database good or bad is how much you can customize it to meet your workflow needs for your organization. So I'll show you an example at the end of the workshop of what our front screen looks like here at the Commons, and it's very much customized to what we do every day. The student template database is kind of made for a generic school, and often what you might end up wanting to do is tailor it to your own particular situation. Once you have a database in place, you can set the security settings to make sure nobody accidentally damages something. So, Larissa, did you have Larissa, can you hear me still, or is your audio gone? Let me type that in the chat window. Is your audio back? If not, what I can do is type more in the chat and talk less, but it's always easier to talk. So the last comment I'm going to make is how you can use the forms for data entry and checking and validation. And this is done really well in the student template database. There's a lot of protections on there. So you can't, for example, put a guardian in unless you first put the guardian in on the guardian page. So you don't have a case of two people with similar names, misspellings, and things like that. So what I'm going to do next is share my screen and give you a guided tour of the template database. And mostly what I'm going to be focusing on is the ways in which this template database does things right. So just to review, the student templates database is basically a model, and Microsoft has several of these. They have one for inventory, for example, and one for tracking sales. Depending on what your primary needs are, I would go and look at the template that matches that best. The student template is a great one for students and guardians and attendants. What you can try on your copy of the database is to create a student, create a guardian, try adding an image, and then try previewing the reports. So what I'm going to do next is share my screen and show you what the back end looks like for the student template database. I'm going to be sharing my screen for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll bring it back into a discussion state. So here's my computer screen. I'm going to share my Microsoft Access window. And what I'm going to do next is just set it to be full screen for everybody. Okay. So you should now see my screen. And what you have in front of you is a pretty well-designed form. This form has tabs, and the tabs are organized by concept area. So the attendance section is where you would mark attendance. So if I were doing attendance for today, today's the 17th, and then I would choose the status, and you can see that the drop-down menus make it easier to avoid making mistakes. You also have these nice features where I can pick out a date and then mark the student for that date. So this is one tab of a form, and you can see some of the tabs have the information in spreadsheet format, and some of them have it in a more traditional format. One of the nice aspects of this form is I can search using the drop-down box at the top. This particular database only has my one student, John Smith, but the more stuff you have in your database, the more useful this kind of a drop-down menu is. So if I choose John Smith, it brings John Smith's information in. Notice the header now has his name. And this is where I can assign the guardian for John Smith. So if I go to guardian information, and here is Mary Smith, but in here would be all the guardians. So let me actually make one more guardian so that it's a little easier to see how this works. So I'm going to go to the guardian list, make a new guardian, and the new guardian is going to be Santa Claus. Santa Claus. I'm going to save it, save and new, close. Now I have two guardians that can be assigned, Santa Claus and Mary Smith. If I go back to my student list and I open John Smith, under the guardian information is a drop-down menu that has all the guardians that are in my database. So what the database has done is basically have separate tables, one for students and one for guardians, and these two tables are connected through the form. And what the form does is makes it very easy for multiple people to update sections of the database without having to be in touch with each other, without having to coordinate with each other. I want to show you what the relationships look like, which is a really important way to look at a database as a designer. Under Database Tools at the top is the Relationships window. And I'm just going to hit close and say, show me all my relationships. You bring all the tables in. And what the relationships do is basically you can, in this case, the forms are not connected at the table level, but they're connected at the form level. So you can choose how strongly you want to tie the tables together in a database. On the left side, let me close some of these windows down, is the overview of my database. At the top are the tables. this particular database has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tables, 5 queries, a bunch of forms, and a bunch of reports. It has some macros at the bottom also. Each of the reports will pull information from a table or from a query, and the forms can actually pull from all of the other types of information that's out there. So I'm going to stop screen sharing now and ask if anyone has any questions. So how did that demo work for you? Do you have any questions about the template database? Oh, I'm glad, Roseanne. I'm glad that this is working out to be a useful demo for you. Okay. So again, the points I was trying to make is that the model database is an example of where you want to get to. You want to have your logical organization of your data into separate tables, and you want the tables to connect to each other either directly or indirectly through the form. In the case of the student template database, there wasn't a strong connection. The connection was made within the form. So Erin has asked a really good question, a little bit more about the relationships in forms versus tables. So the next topic I was going to go into was basically to take two tables and connect them to each other using a relationship. And what this does is it's a strong type of connection. So for example, if I have a list of students in my school, and I have another list of families. Multiple students in my school may be siblings, and they actually belong to the same family. So I would have a smaller list of items in the table called families, and the families table might have the street address, the home phone number, things like that. A strong connection means that every time that I connect two things together, if I make a change in one place, it can actually affect the other. I could set, for example, a relationship up so that if I delete a student from my school and there are no other students from that family in my school, that the family also can be deleted, which makes it a little easier to keep a table up to date. That would be an example of a very strong relationship. I could make a slightly weaker relationship, which leaves the family in my database because they may have a sibling that will come to my school a few years from now, but just deletes the student. That will be an example of a relationship between the two tables that is a weak relationship. Deleting a record in one table does not result in deleting a record in another table. The student template database actually doesn't do any of these things. All it has is the form itself has a lookup. So the tables are actually not connected to each other. I could delete a family and it would leave the students alone. I could delete a student, it would leave the families alone. But the form makes it look like the two are connected. So I guess it depends on how strong a data integrity you need in your database. If I were running a large corporation, it might be much more efficient for me to have the strong relationships. In our case here in the Commons, we're mostly trying to make our database very flexible, so we don't make strong relationships. We just kind of connect things to make it easier for ourselves. Erin, I hope that helped a little bit. It might be also make more sense after we go through the next activity. So are there any last questions before I go to the next topic? Good, I'm glad, Erin, that that worked for you. So the next thing I was going to do was basically show you a screen video. Oh yes, Roseanne asked if it's possible to modify an existing template. Very much so. Often what I will do is exactly that. I will start with a template that's pretty good and pretty close to what I want and just make adjustments to it so that it works in my context. And we can definitely look at that after this next part. So the next thing I'm going to show you, and this is a screen video I made on my computer using a program called Jing, which is a free online screen video program, which I like very much. It's a 2-minute video. You will hear my voice, and basically it will just go through the process of taking two tables in a blank database and connecting them to each other via a lookup, so that when I click on one field under the student table, it pulls the information from another table. The two tables I'm going to use are called people, I think, and let's do it. Let me go ahead and put the link in the chat window so you can watch this on your own computer. And I'll also play it by sharing my screen, so it will work in both ways. So this is the link to the video that I'm going to be showing. It's a 3-minute video, and it basically walks you through the process of connecting tables to each other. I'll go ahead and I'll play it. I just don't know if I play it from my computer, if you'll be able to hear the audio or not. So just let me know if the audio does not show up. So I'm going to share my computer screen. I won't do it full size this time, so that I can still keep in place with the chat window. So here is look up connections across tables, big play button. It looks like it might be much more efficient to launch it on your computer. How did that work for everybody? Were you able to hear on your end? Okay, hopefully you were able to see that screen video. If not, I wanted to mention that it's on the web site. So what I'm going to be trying to do with these online workshops is put recordings of everything on the website. So I did make that video go really fast, and you can do it a little slower and follow along at your convenience. So we are finding that using screen videos to teach is really a good fit for us. If it's something you're curious about, get back in touch with us. It took me about 10 minutes to make that video, so it's not like it's a pretty efficient way to create some training materials. So what I tried to show you in that demo is basically a relationship that is between two tables. And you saw that when we went into the relationships view, you could physically see the line that connects two tables to each other. The way that relationships work is you could have a one-to-one relationship. Every person has only one and only one secure social security number. You can have a one-to-many relationship. I may have many children. I may have many relatives. I may have many books in my library. You can have a many-to-one relationship, which would be a case where many of my books are maybe published by the same publishing house. Or you can have the most complicated of the lot is the many-to-many relationships, which is generally kind of painful. And what I try to do is avoid them as much as I can. And I try to convert things into an either a one-to-many or a many-to-one, just to avoid the many-to-many, because I've had it just makes the logic much more complicated with access. So that's pretty much all I was going to talk about on relationships. The next activity is actually courtesy of Roseanne's request. I'm basically going to go through the process of importing a good bit of information from Excel and show you something that's really quite powerful in Microsoft Access. It's called Table Analyzer. So before we start that, does anyone have any last questions about relationships? Type that into the chat window in case any audio issues are still going on. Questions on relationships before we move on. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead now and just walk you through the process of taking information that's in a spreadsheet and bringing it into Access. So the advantage of Access over a spreadsheet is Access has multiple tables that are connected together with these relationships. The downside of Excel is the complexity of the data can become quite strong. So the spreadsheet we're going to use is the same one that we used for our Excel tutorial on pivot tables. It's a spreadsheet that was created by Microsoft, and it has about 600 rows of sales data in it. It's always better to have a lot of data when you're working with something like this example, just so you have some things you can actually run some queries on. And we don't want to be typing in all individual people to query. So the spreadsheet is linked on the same website, on the Access tutorial site. I'm going to copy and paste the link into the chat window, just as I did for the student database. So here it is. If you click on this link, it will ask you whether you want to open the spreadsheet in Excel, which you don't want to do, or do you want to save the spreadsheet somewhere on your computer, which you do want to do. And once you have the database saved on your computer, I'm going to share my screen again and walk you through the process of importing the data and running the table analyzer. So while each of you is bringing the spreadsheet on your computer, I'm just going to talk through what I'm going to do. I'm going to open a blank database, and I'm going to bring this data in. Then I'm going to run the table analyzer on the data. What Table Analyzer does is it goes through the table and tries to make logical decisions about how you might want to break a large amount of data into separate tables. And this particular table it did a very good job on. You can always ignore its advice and make your own decisions, but at least it will walk you through the process of taking a large amount of data and turning it into a table relationship. The other request Roseanne had by email was a find duplicate query, and this is a good one to try that with also. So is there anyone who was not able to get to the spreadsheet? Just type in the chat window if you need a little bit more time. Okay. I'll wait another second just to make sure there isn't anyone who's struggling to get to the spreadsheet. Oh, you got logged out while trying. Are you back in Adobe Connect? Oh, good. Welcome back, Roseanne. So what I'm going to do next, I'm assuming folks are doing all right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to import the data, run the table analyzer, and then show you some examples of queries. So I'm going to be sharing my screen for maybe 5 minutes. And then when that's done, I'm going to give you plenty of time to do the same thing on your own computer, because it's a lot easier to watch me do this than it is to actually do it on your machine. So the next thing I'm going to do is share my screen, my computer screen. Okay. Microsoft Access. And I'm going to set it to be full screen. So what you should see on your screen is basically going to be my Microsoft Access database, and it should be taking over your whole screen. The first thing I'm going to do is close out of the student template database and make myself a new database. It's just going to be a blank one. And I'm going to leave the name as it is, database 1, and hit create. This is a nice blank database. You can see there's nothing in it except one little table. The next thing I want to do is import the data from the spreadsheet. So under external data is import, and under import are all the file formats that Excel can read, that Access can read. I'm going to go to the Excel tab, and this particular spreadsheet, I have saved it already on my computer. So let me just find it. Handouts, Microsoft Access, and I just need to change the format. It's not there. Let me just bring it one more time from the web. Go to my downloads directory and get it. Sorry about this. Computer. There it is. It's called using pivot tables.xls, and you can ignore these security concerns. The first question, you notice it puts lines in. It separates my data for me. I hit next again. It guesses correctly that the first row has all my column headings. Hit next. I just hit next, 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 and I let Access choose a primary key because that keeps the database in good shape in terms of connections. If I hit finish, there's my pivot table. I'm not going to save the import steps. So let's take a look at the data. Down at the bottom of the screen is the number of records. You see there's 700 records in here. Some of them look like they're blank. There's a lot of data. As you look at it, you can see that there are some general fields. There's a region field, a product field, a customer field, and those would be ones that logically you might want to make into separate tables. But rather than making the decisions myself, I'm going to let Access tell me what I should do. Under Database Tools is the Analyze Table wizard. I'm going to hit Analyze Table and run the wizard. And it basically walks me through the idea of eliminating duplicated information. So it's going to go through my table and find cases where the same information is being used repeatedly. I'm going to choose Next. This is basically the wizard just telling me what it's going to do. It's going to take my table and split it into several smaller tables and eliminate duplication. So if I hit Next again, this is the table that I want to analyze, called Pivot Table. And I'm going to let the wizard decide what I should do. What the wizard did is it created 3 tables for me, one with customer, one with region, and one with the actual information in the table. I'm going to rename the tables. This one is going to be my records. This one is going to be my customers. And this one is going to be my regions. It's good to name tables something logical so you can realize later exactly what's in them. I'm going to hit next again. And it's checking that the connections are correct. And you can see the 1 to infinity shows you that it's one customer can have many records, just as one region can have many records. Okay? I just am going to hit next and next. Now it finds examples of what it thinks are typographical errors. So in this case, it thinks that Chevron and Citigroup are the same, but it's not. So I'm going to change that to leave it as it is. And same with Compaq. And generally, it does pretty well. In this case, both of its suggestions were wrong. I'm going to hit next and make a query. And it created a new table called Pivot Table New. And the big difference between the original and the new is I now have lookup fields. The regions is no longer a text field where I could type in something wrong. It's a lookup that connects. Same with customer. So this is the lookup field for customer. This is the lookup field for regions. The last thing I'm going to do before I stop with my demo is I'm going to go to relationships and show you the relationships that have been created. So I have a table called records connected to regions and also connected to customers. I've taken something that was a flat spreadsheet and I've turned it into a database that has 3 connected tables. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Some trouble with my mouse. Just 1 second. Okay, so let me turn it back over to you. How did that work for you? And I'm going to give you a few minutes now to try this out on your own end, and then we should have a few minutes for Q&A. Okay. Let me go ahead and put my slides back up. Access. Okay, we did this. So this is the stage we're at. So does anyone have any questions? I'm going to give you a few minutes to try this on your own computers. Erin has a very good question. Do you need to delete the original region column now that there is a lookup region column? I would do that once I had verified that I hadn't accidentally lost any data. But yes, sometimes people just leave the old one in the table and call it region original because there may be typos in there that connect to information that other people have. But yeah, there's no reason to hold on to those old columns. It keeps them there just as a backup for you. You'll also notice that it made a full copy of all of the tables. So you still have your original table that you can use. That tool, Roseanne, works for all tables. What it basically does is it analyzes the table to look for things that might be more efficiently done with a relationship. And sometimes it will give you advice that you don't want. Sometimes it might be more work to have a relationship that you have to maintain. But in most cases, the logic it uses is that any value that's repeated enough times, it's going to be better for it to be in a separate table. And here at the Commons, one of the last things I'm going to show you before I wind up is a little bit about our database. We find it easier to have things in multiple tables because you can update them a lot simpler. I guess, I think it's almost at 1 o'clock, and I know people are going to be leaving very soon. So let me go forward and just show you. We didn't get to talk about forms, but that's certainly something that we love here in the Commons. This is an example of a switchboard form. This is what our main screen looks like here at the Commons. And the logic we have is that it should be easy to get to things we do every day. So at the end of every workday, our desk staff can click attendance and put in the attendance for that day. They can see what's needed at the end of the week with the weekly wrap-up. A switchboard form, all it is a form that loads whenever you open the database, and you put on there things that you have to use every day. So just make it a little simpler to navigate your database. And you saw this in the student template database. It automatically starts with either the student list or the guardian list. I know, Roseanne, you had been interested in the looking for duplicates query. So I'm happy to keep going and do that next. Let me stop and just, it's only 5 minutes before the end. What I want to ask you is that I'm going to be sending you an email with a SurveyMonkey form, since I can't give you a physical paper form to let me know what worked and what didn't work. So just keep an eye on your email for an email from me with the SurveyMonkey. And I'm happy to answer questions about Access. I've used it for a long time and I do enjoy it very much. It's not a workshop we present that often, mostly because it's actually really hard to figure out which aspect of Access needs to be shown. But don't hesitate to get in touch with us and let us know how we can improve our workshops and also how we can help you further with Access. So I'm going to wait a few minutes and see if anybody has questions. And then after that, I'm going to do a screen share and just show you the find duplicates query, because that was one of the requests that Roseanne had via email. So I'll be quiet now and ask if anyone has any questions for me. Oh, I'm glad that this seems to have worked out well. Okay, I guess it doesn't look like there's any burning questions. So what I will do next, I'm going to go back to the slide that was about queries. So one of the questions that Roseanne had asked by email was, how do you find duplicates? And when we did the poll, people were very interested in queries. When you make a query in Microsoft Access, you can use your query to actually do very powerful things. So if I do a unique value query, it will find one example of everything in the list. So for example, if I have a table that has a few thousand addresses in it, and I run a unique value query on the states, it should only give me the 50 states, because those are all the options for states. The find duplicate query is kind of the exact opposite of that. What it's looking for is anything that's in there more than once. Both of those are really simple. They're just a wizard that you have. What I use quite a lot are the update queries and the delete queries. So an update query might be something like, find everybody whose class year is freshman and change all of them to sophomores. So it would update all the freshmen and turn them into sophomores. It would update all the seniors and turn them into alums. That is an example of an update query. So what I will do next is I will share my screen and I will do a couple of queries, and I don't think I should be on very long. I think it will be pretty straightforward for you to see how these work. We'll start with the find duplicates query. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Center changes. Screen. Oh, not what I want. Share my computer screen. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Access. Here I am in Access, and you should all be able to see my screen. I'm going to close the relationships. On the left side is my pivot table. That's the one that had all that information in it. So we'll use that to run our queries. If I hit Create and I go to Query Wizard, here is the Find Duplicates query. It's really that simple. You click OK, and it says, what table are you looking for the duplicates in? I'm going to choose the pivot table. The next question is, which field might contain duplicate information. The lovely part is I can actually look for combinations, but I'll do something simple. Duplicate value. There should be a lot of duplicates for region because there's only 3 regions in the data set. If I hit next, what else would you like to see? I'd like to see everything. Next. And I would like to view the results. And it's basically giving me all of the duplicates for regions. So I had 700 records in my original table. 563 of them are duplicates. So in that case, this would be a perfect one to break into a separate table, which is what the table analyzer did. Let me do that again with a different field. Let me close this. I'm going to go back to Query Wizard and find duplicates. This time, rather than it's the same table I'm looking at, but the field, I'd like to look for dates when I had more than one thing happen on the same date. So my duplicate value field now is the date. Just as I did before, I'd like to look at everything. I hit next and finish. And now there should be much less in terms of duplicates. And you can see now my duplicates number is 446. There are less situations where I had multiple things happen on the same day than situations where I had multiple regions. Okay. The next thing I'll do is a unique values one, which is the opposite as I mentioned. So I'm going to go into Query Design and pull the pivot table in. And let's say I want to know all of the customers. So I'm going to double click on customer to bring customer down here. And if I right click and go to properties, it shows me the properties for the query. So what I want to do is basically under, let's see, under unique values, I basically want to set this to have only one answer. So if I run this right now, I will see all my customers. If I go back to design view, where is the sheet? If I click on the query, right click and go to properties, that's still not giving me the details that I need. I think I'll have to come back to this one. What I'm looking for is a property that lets me do unique values for the answers that are in here. Under totals, if I do total group by, that will actually do the same thing. So these are the unique set of customers that are in my data set. I'm going to go back into design mode. So under totals is where I can do sums and averages and combinations. So if I want to find out for each customer, what is the total amount of revenue that I made from that customer, I basically am grouping by customer and adding the revenue. And this will do analysis on my data set to give me the sum of revenue for each of the customers that is in my data set. If I want to change this into an update query or an append query, that's where the buttons are, and then there's the delete button. You can actually use a query to get rid of, say, everybody who has moved out from your town. Okay? So let me go ahead and stop sharing. Set this back. And I'll just ask Rosemary, Roseanne, did that work? Were there any other questions you had about the duplicates queries? Let me put the access back up. So I want to thank everybody for taking time for the online workshop, and I'm happy to answer questions or do any other demos that you are looking for. So thanks everybody. I'm going to stay on for a while and I'm happy to answer questions, and just look for a SurveyMonkey in your email. And we'll be putting this recording, yeah, Larissa, the session has been recorded. I'm going to be putting it up on the same online tutorial page that we used for the day. We'll also put it up on our YouTube channel, probably sometime next week. It takes us about a day to process the video so that we can post it. But by middle of next week, it should be up. Good, I'm glad, Larissa. That was part of the reason why we're trying to record these is to make it a little easier for people to get to them later. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon, and don't hesitate to get back in touch with us.